Okay, this is the interview for Professor Joshua Myers, African American Studies class, study of the black family, and I'm going to interview my grandmother. It's the elder of my family, Dolores Casey, born June 18th, 1945, and Grandma, I'm just going to ask you a couple questions. Right now, we're going over Michael Gomez, and I'm just going to ask you a couple questions to see if any of his topics cover what you went through when you grew up. First, let me start by asking you describe your family life during childhood.
My family life during my childhood consisted of three brothers and six sisters. There was nine of us uh, from a single parent family. My childhood, as far back as I can remember, we was a poor family. My mother had trouble making ends meet. Unfortunately, my father uh, disappeared when we was all very young, so it was a struggle for my mother from day to day. Uh, Many a day we went to bed hungry or having been sent to neighbor's house asking for money to buy bread, the basic food that we needed to survive. It was a very difficult childhood, mainly because we was poor. Uh, as far as school, I was able to go to a Catholic school, so the education was okay. Besides being, I went to Catholic school. Besides being called names and black and fat and everything, I managed to survive, and I did graduate some 18 years. I did graduate from high school. Um, my mother, unfortunately, was able to survive. She was a clean woman. She kept us immaculate. Our house, our food, everything was immaculate. Even though we had very little money, our home life was immaculate and clean, thanks to my mother. There was now no father figure around, so it was mainly up to my mother to make a living for us. At a very early age, I managed to get a job cleaning people's floors, scrubbing, and that helped me a whole lot. But I was able to help buy food for my family, when there was none to be had. Um, I started working at a very early age, cleaning, doing whatever I could to help my help us, put food on the table. I scrubbed, I cleaned, I did hair, I did some everything. Yes, even going to school, and having to walk to school some 50 something blocks because we didn't have car fare. Having to wear shoes with cardboard in it to keep your feet from getting wet. As I said before, we come from a very poor family, single family. My mother struggled, but she did the best she could. And before too long, I was 18 out of high school, graduated from the high school, and able to work to help, further feed my family. I had at least four siblings that was underneath me. Um, Childhood at that time was rough, but I survived it.
Okay.
Thanks, thanks be to God, I survived.
Okay, so touching on something you said earlier, you said that you went to neighbors' houses. So let me ask you, were there any members of your family outside of the household that you would consider family, like maybe not blood relatives, but maybe people that you would consider family outside of the household?
No, there was no family member outside the household. We mainly, um, I stand to be corrected. We did have family members right around the corner from us, but we was not a closely knit family. So we stayed to ourselves and they stayed to themselves.
Okay, and another thing, was that a norm for people, well, black people that you knew growing up, was it a norm to be poor? Were
Oh
you the
yeah.
only poor people, or
No, it was the norm.
it was the norm?
It
So you
was the
didn't really,
norm.
so you really didn't feel weird around
Weird.
other
No,
black
no,
people.
no. It was the norm.
Okay. So outside of the neighbors, like you said, you didn't have you said that you went to the neighbors' houses to get food
To
sometimes.
borrow money to get food, to borrow a bread, uh, uh, flour from my mother. We was getting surplus food then. So bread to borrow money, just for bread. Well, we can remember, I can remember, things are so bad that we used to take a slice of bread and peel the heel off of it and roll the middle part up, and just suck on it so it would last longer, to kill hunger. Those days as well. Mother always had a pot of beans on the stove for us to eat. But after a while, we all got tired of beans. But it was a poor time, a very poor
And
time.
what is surplus?
Surplus food was food that the government gave you. The government gave you cheese, flour, canned beef, and we could get that once a month. And uh, we had to, well, I had to, because I was one of the oldest ones, pull wagons to go across this bridge to bring the surplus food
Mm-hmm.
back to the house. And where the kids would constantly make fun of you. Go get your surplus food. Go get your food. Surplus food. Go get your food.
And who were these kids that made fun? Were they if all the black people, it was a norm to be poor, who would be making fun?
Well, children gonna be children no matter what years or what age or what century you're in, or neighborhood children. Sometimes my friends were just laughing and poking fun, because we had to get surplus food, just to survive, to make it to just to survive, to cook food for us on a daily basis. But the humiliation was a great part of it.
Okay. So what institutions played a role? Like you said, you went to Catholic school. Was that like a major
No,
help? Or
back then the Catholic school was not like the Catholic schools are now. Now you can go to they have different organizations, Catholic, Protestant, that you could go to get food. Back then and there, it was not heard of going to your local church, to get food to feed your family. It was nothing like it, like it is now. So the church did not play a major role in feeding us or helping us get food.
okay. So what about the education part?
Education part, I was fortunate to go to a Catholic school. Education was fine. Education was fine. As I said, I was fortunate to go to a Catholic school, so I got a real good education. I have no problem with the education, except at times because I went to Catholic elementary school. The school was very prejudiced, and I felt every sting of prejudice when I was going to school, uh, especially elementary school. Those were not good days. Again, I felt the sting of being black and going to a Catholic school. We paid the price. My sister unfortunately got pregnant when she was 13, and subsequently the school would penalize us because my sister got pregnant. It was a bad time.
How would the school? Why would they do that? And how did they penalize you for your sister having a baby?
Because the nuns was very prejudiced back then. They was closed-minded, was nothing like the nuns are in this day and time. They were just prejudiced. They let it be known. To me, I was fortunately when I was going to school, I got good grades. And the 1 year in particular, I was in 8th grade, and the American Legion Award. Uh, the nun told the children they had to pick somebody to get this award. So my name came up, and this is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So when she counted the votes, she found out that I had quite a few votes. So I can remember her telling the children that they had to take the vote over the next day when we came in. The next day when we came in, they took the vote over again. I got a couple more votes. She didn't like that. She said that the voting was unfair. That I wasn't. I couldn't be. They couldn't vote for me. The last time, thanks be to God, I got almost every vote in the room. The children, the kids, my classmates, saw to it that I uh, uh, received the award and that they overrode what the principal of the school said about it not being fair that I should get this award. But believe me, it was because I was black. So when I got my medal, they pinned the medal on everybody else, but he gave the priest, the father, head of that archdiocese, gave me my medal in my hand. Another time I always felt ridiculed when I went to Catholic elementary school because they had 3 of each grade and there was not a lot of black people in the school, so they managed to put us each in. There was 3 of us. They put us each in separate rooms, and when it came time to clean the floor, the kids would joke and say, "Can I borrow? Are you going out for Halloween, Casey? Are you going out for Halloween?" And I said, "No, I know what he was talking about, but I want to borrow your face to be Aunt Jemima." But that type of prejudiceness that went on when I went to a Catholic school in the the 60s or late 50s, very prejudiced, openly prejudiced. And then the nun would, because my sister had the baby, one afternoon somebody was during the springtime, and somebody was throwing dirty pictures in the window. And the principal came to me and told me, "Go get your school bag. But you're the one bringing them in here. Go get the school bag." And I had to go get my school bag and be ridiculed again to show her that I was not the one that had that was bringing dirty pictures into the classroom. And mainly because my sister had that baby and they frowned upon teenagers having baby back then and there. It was a rough area. So little things like that subtle things that they did to me, when I was in Catholic elementary school, I will never forget it. But I thank God for the kids because especially when it's come to getting that medal, just as like the principal was determined that I was not going to get the medal, the children were determined that I was going to get the medal. So I did get the medal. And that was a good experience.
Okay, so you grew up where? Philadelphia?
Philadelphia,
Philadelphia?
Southwest Philadelphia.
So you would say that, like, based off what you know, do you think it was just as prejudiced in Philadelphia as it was in the South, or maybe not as prejudiced?
I know nothing about the South because unfortunately I have not traveled a lot, so I can't speak on the prejudice, between Philadelphia and the cities in down south. I have no idea. Only what I heard through different people that it was much worse down there. But being black, being poor, having a stigma on your family because your sister got pregnant when she was X years of age. All those things contribute to my feeling the way I do about the things that have happened in my life and how you really don't know who is president or who isn't president. To me, it was more subtle back then and there, but right now, the situation is better, but it's still nowhere where it should be. And this is back in the 60s. High school was a good experience. I went to West Catholic Girls High School. That was an excellent experience. I had 4 good years. And my only drawback was that when I did graduate, but I can remember going to look for a job. I had only had car fare one way, and I got on the trolley going the wrong way. I broke the heel off my shoe, and when I got to the interview, the interview with the interviewer told me she didn't even look at my resume or anything. I graduated from West Catholic back then and in '64. The interviewer told me that I wasn't qualified. She didn't even look at my application, and After that experience and having broke my heel and having to walk home because I didn't have no car fare, I, my self-esteem was very low. I did not feel good about myself, because of, being black. And even though I graduated, I knew I was just as good as some of the other kids, but being black again played a part in me not getting that job on my first interview after I graduated. After I graduated from West Pat.
So what did you do after that? Did you stop looking for work or?
No, I didn't stop looking for work. What I did was I volunteered to work for this a husband and a wife. I think they were lawyers or doctors. I told me that if I watched their children, that I want to go to mortician school back then and there. And she told me that if I watched their children, then because I had two little kids, then they would pay my way to school. I said okay, and I thought, well, it was a move, and I could get to go to school. But midway in the summer, that was in Fort Washington. I can remember walking the baby with the baby coach and having to walk by a group of white boys, and they had a dog. So when I walked past them, and they started sniggling. So after a little while, I turned around, and they was trying to sick the dog on me. And needless to say, I threw the baby coach carriage in front of me. I didn't think about the babies that was in it or anything. I thought about was this dog. They were sicking this dog on me. Again, these things was too expensive in my life. So after that, needless to say, I did not go back up there after that incident because it just wasn't for me.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. Where do you think the black family or the black race went from the way it was back then to the way it is now? Better or worse? Where do you think if it did get worse, why do you think it got worse?
Um,
Because what you see on TV, I'm pretty sure that wasn't going on back, at
no,
least not in the
no.
50s and the 60s. It seemed like, from my understanding, it seems like black people had it a little more together back then. Well, at least socially back then than they do now.
Okay.
So what happened?
Yeah, say that again one more.
What do you think happened between, I say, the early 60s and 2013? That Do you think the black race got better or do you think it got worse?
I think in some areas, I think conditions as far as a race got a little bit better. Uh, Now it seems like we're tolerated more. Back then, there was very little toleration for black people, but now they tolerate us more. Prejudice, segregation still exists, but in a more subtle way. Uh, Sometimes I like to believe that, one day we all will live, together equally, but it's kind of hard because to me, the underlying racism is still there. For kids now, it's better in terms of going to school, being accepted. In terms now, it's better for the children because at least our kids are able to go to school, to get a better education, to get a decent job, as opposed to back there when I was coming up. I mean, it was hard for us to find gainful employment. But now in this day and time, it's a little bit better. They can go to school, they can graduate, they can go to the top of their class, get jobs. You don't have to you don't have to worry about segregation, blatant segregation now, like you did back there, in the early, the late, 50s and the early 60s.
So just to touch on that a little bit more, when did you start seeing a change for better? When when did segregation? Well, we know when segregation ended, but when did racism kind of start to be more subtle instead of blatant and in the open?
I think after Martin Luther King did what he did, I think that played a great part in us being accepted uh, as a race. But prior to that, it was, it was as we used to say, stay back, you're black, stay back. But when Martin Luther King came on board, it instilled a sense of pride within me and some of my family members. We saw then that we could make it if we strive real hard, if we study, if we put our best foot forward, that we could make it out there too. Uh, Being black, it still, it would still hold you back, but you could, I believe that we took a step forward, when Martin Luther King came on board. And so people was prejudiced, but they was able to hide it in a subtle way so that unless something happened, you would never know it. But now, back then and there, you didn't have to hide it. It was just out there. Now people hide it. You really don't know who is prejudiced and who isn't prejudiced. You can be black, you can be white, you know, it's prejudice exists in all races, all colors.
So back in the day, was was it racism from other races outside of white people?
No, it was racism mainly for white people. But back there in the day, where I came from and well, there was hardly any other race of people around, nothing but the black people, and the white people. The Indian, the foreigner, we saw very few of them. So I can't say, whether it really made a difference whether you was black or I mean where racism came out, your own people, the other people, but we wasn't exposed to other people. We was living in predominantly black areas, so we stayed in that circle.
Okay.
School time when the school, next time I went to West Catholic and it was predominantly white, and I was able to make the adjustment and had a good time in high school. Um, if I was to sum up this interview, I would say thank God for being born for these times now, because there's many more opportunity out here for us. You just have to strive. You can be anything now. Our kids are taught, most kids, that you can do anything that you put your mind down to. It's not based on skin color or anything else. Where you come from, how much money you got. If you strive ahead, you can exceed and exceed. Um, you can do what you want to do. You can go as far as you want to go. There's there's nothing to hold you back like it held us back when we was coming up. You can doctors, lawyers, uh, and if put your best foot forward and really work and go to school, work, and become knowledgeable about the things that you want to do, you can succeed and just do anything that you want to do in this day and time.
I have a question. Do you think because the way you were ridiculed as a child, do you think that considering that you weren't the only one that went through that back in the day, do you think that black people in general struggle with their identity after being ridiculed like that?
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure there are quite a few people. We as a people struggle with our identity, and at times sometimes I said to myself, I don't want to be black. I want to be of a different race. Because I'll be treated better. I wouldn't have to work as hard. To get things. But we are treated better now. I believe my generation. I believe that we are treated better, even though prejudice still exists, but it's better for our kids now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just gonna ask two more questions. One thing that I didn't really touch on because you're a relatively young grandmother. 1945. That I know a lot of friends. Their grandparents are like maybe born in the 30s. Some of
Hmm.
them even in the 20s. So I would have to say, do you remember anything about your grandmother and her experiences?
Yes, my grandmother was a great person. She come from, I believe, South Carolina, North Carolina. She was uh, separated from her children and sent up here to work with her parents up north here. But her children stayed down south. She came up here to work, and so it was a big difference because she was separated from her children at an early age, and she came up here.
Separated meaning
She left North Carolina to come up here to Philadelphia, where she thought the opportunity was better. They told her that the opportunity was better, so she left her daughter, which is my mother, down South Carolina and North Carolina, and she came up north, to work and to make money and to make ends meet. And I do believe that it was a good time for her. She lived to be 84. Yeah, my grandmother lived to be 84. But she also had siblings, sister and brothers that she took care of, while her mother, while, the older lady worked and everything. She didn't have I don't believe that she had a real great life. Again, she was poor also. She had to work just to make ends meet. My mother has a brother, and so she worked to take care of him until he got sick and passed on. So,
you would think from what you're saying, you would think that I'm not sure if it was just only our family or it was a lot of other black families, but you would think that going through struggles like that, that our family would have been closer. But
well,
the way you're saying is that you didn't have any other family outside of you had family around the corner and you didn't communicate like that. So how did that happen?
okay, that came about because, uh, unfortunately, our family we wasn't a close knit family. Um, when you, as children, and I think this had a lot to do with the way my mother was raised. Her mother came up north here to work, but she was left with her grandfather. And when he died, when she was 5 years old, she went to live with her stepmother. And my mother would tell you that that was not a good period in her life. She felt unloved and wanted. And back there in that time, people didn't openly show being affectionate. It just wasn't in the picture. And nowadays, thank God that the little kids, can hug you and kiss you and say I love you. And back then and there, that was foreign to us because we never had it. My grandmother never experienced because she was busy making ends meet, taking care of us, taking care of her family, and it was never taught to my mother. So subsequently, she couldn't show us affection. So as a family, we wasn't close. We didn't fight and argue, but we just wasn't close. Where could go and talk to them and just confide in them. We never had that. We never experienced. It took my mother. My mother was 60 something before she could bring herself to tell us that she loved us. Because being affectionate, was not one of her something that she received, so she couldn't give it back to us, and we in turn couldn't give to our kids. And it was just a hard time as far as being close and just enjoying, your cousins and things like that. They wasn't around us. We didn't know too much about them, so we stayed to ourselves most of the time.
And last question, I don't think we really touched on this, but just to go back about the question between this generation and the old generation, do you, do you think this generation has struggles that are new? Like, for instance, you might turn on the news and see somebody getting murdered or something like that. Did you have to face some of those same demons that we have to face today back when you were growing up, or like when did that transition happen to where as though these things started to happen?
Okay, I personally, I think that the kids now, the young people now have no clue of what life is really all about. The struggles that we went through as kids, unfortunately, most of them have never experienced anything like half the stuff that we went through. So they don't have no appreciation of what it is to work hard to to struggle to get ahead. Unfortunately, most of the kids now they get things handed to them. We was talking about handymen. You know, back then there, the handyman was a man that fixed everything. That you had to do work around the house, especially if you didn't have a husband. Now the children these days, they know very little about doing that type of work. They're interested in the computers and game playing, and computers is good and computers is bad. And I think the kids now are worse off than we ever were. Well, we didn't have half of that. We didn't have any of the modern days technology that the children have now. And I think the kids are the ones that are suffering because of it. To me, most of them don't even know what it is to really enjoy life because everything has been somewhat handed to them. Our parents worked; they taught us how to work, so we was able to make ends meet. The kids now, most parents do work, but everything else is handed to them, so they will never really know what it is to be, unfortunately, poor. Poor now, and poor back then and there was two different things entirely. It's no comparing, no comparing. But this generation, the kids are, they're not as wise. I don't think they're not as wise as we was when we was coming up.
But why do you think that? Why do you think that? Well,
but because I think that because we was taught, our parents taught us a lot about life, a lot of things to do. The kids now, the parents are younger. The parents are about just getting through the day, getting through the night, getting through the week. So that time that our parents took or somebody took to teach us things, it doesn't exist in a lot of families now. Because the parents now are constantly on the go, 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 go. Modern this, modern that. TV, TV, TV. Fast food, fast food. Cooking, cleaning. All that was taught to us. Now this generation, I believe, they're not taught, so they don't know. They don't know about true cleanliness, how it is to work to get something or to work towards something, as opposed to having it just handed over to them.
So what do you think that happened? Where the transition from parents teaching their kids these things to not teaching?
I think it happened when most of the women came out the house and went to work. When the women when mothers went to work. So to me, I feel like it became got to have time to do this, time to do that. I'm tired. I don't feel like doing this. So I believe that back then and there, the difference is that mothers today in this time, they traded off something that was needed to help them raise the kids, to make the kids obedient, to listen. They traded off for a good job, money, working all the time, and just coming home, watching somebody else watch the kids, checking homework. I think the mothers traded that off, and to me, that was an important what they did, was not wise. It was not good because the kids are lacking now. The kids, even the little kids, the language, the things that they hear, the things that they see on TV. Years ago, we didn't have to worry about that. But drugs was around, but it wasn't around, right in front of our faces. Now it's everywhere. Drugs is everywhere, and I believe that that's a major part why there's a breakdown in the way that our kids, our young kids are disrespect, the music. It's another prime incident. What dancing, cussing, and I'm sure it went on when we was coming up, but we didn't hear it every day. We didn't have to worry about people cussing and carrying on. Sex, drugs. I mean, that was like kept away from us. We wasn't exposed to things like
Yeah,
that.
well,
And we was poor, but we wasn't exposed to that.
I definitely can agree with what you're saying. But one thing I will say is that you might go to a rap concert. I've been to a rap concert before, and you'll be surprised. Most of the people in a crowd are white. So if white people can listen to the same music that we listen to, why do you think that there's such a difference, if there is a difference between the two? I think if I understand you correctly, you're saying that it's a mixture of the mother not being in the house, the mother
Great part.
working,
Yeah.
and the drugs,
And the father not being in the
the
picture.
father not being in the picture, and
the drugs, the alcohol.
so all of these things you think are the reason that this stereotype of black people exists.
Right. Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I think I'm gonna end the interview right there. I took enough of your time up, and I definitely appreciate the interview, and hopefully I can do it again soon. All right, thanks, Grandma.
Hopefully it could be some help to you.